Welcome to Run Tell This and BET presents Justice for George Floyd. This is a series of special video episodes of the Run Tell This podcast. If you're new to Run Tell This, we are a group of Black journalists and longtime friends. I am Mara Schiavocampo, joined by Wesley Lowery and Keith Reed, and we get together each week to talk about news and social justice. And we are doing a series on the Chauvin trial. We're going to start now talking about what we've seen over the last few days, the witnesses that we've seen over the last few days. And one thing that has been common among them is this emotional outpouring that we've seen, this witnessing of trauma and re-traumatization, especially among Black witnesses. So joining us now to break all this down is Tremaine Lee, MSNBC correspondent and host of the Into America podcast. Tremaine, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Tremaine, thank you so much for being here with us. And for those who don't know, Tremaine Lee is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who has been one of the lead reporters. He was one of the first reporters on the Trayvon Martin case and has been on the ground in essentially every city that has seen this play out in the last decade. And Tremaine, like me and Keith, is a Black man. And I wanted to ask you, Tremaine, about the poignant, powerful testimony that we saw from Charles Mcmillan, who broke down in tears on the stand after watching the video.
Oh my God.
Just take your time.
Just know when you're ready.
We'll just give you a moment, Mr. McMillan. I'm not sure if there's water for you as well. Oh, if you need a break to get some water, let me know, and we can take a break.
The testimony we saw from Donald Williams, the MMA fighter, he broke down as he was listening to the 911 call that he made, calling the police on the police.
Yeah, I'm sitting here talking with another off-duty firefighter that just sat here and watched it in front of us as well. Okay. And she told him to check the man's pulse, but they wouldn't even check the pulse.
Okay, 1 second.
We've seen this kind of from person after person after person.
You know, Wes, I think what we've seen, and I think what has been so painful is when you think back to the days of the public lynchings, and the killing was so public and it was so celebratory, and we can hear the soundtrack of Strange Fruit and these Black bodies hanging, and you see the smiling faces, and the wounds made even deeper because of the public nature of it. And it's not enough just to have been killed in public, but then for each of these witnesses to have to relive it, and each of us to have to relive it. And so when we ponder on ideas of justice, I'm not sure we understand what justice actually is, because we've never experienced it in this country. Black people have never gotten justice. We don't have full agency as American citizens to really be able to, get our hands around it like that. But I think that the trauma, being replicated over and again, and Black pain is so ordinary that it's almost extraordinary when we get to see this display because it's so routine. And I think about, and it's been said, all day, but the minor witnesses who were too young to show their faces, but they weren't too young to witness the killing of a man and watch this man take his last breaths. I think it's, no terrible pun intended, breathtaking.
One of the things that's been so striking to me, and I recognize that I'm saying this to a group of Black men, is seeing the pain of Black men. Because, it has not been lost on me that the requirement of strength takes a toll on Black men, because you have to be strong. You have to be strong to live in this society. You have to be strong to be a Black man in America. And so we so rarely see these expressions of Black male suffering. I haven't even seen it in my own home. I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen my husband cry, and I would still have fingers left over. So to see Mr. Williams crying, this is an MMA fighter. This is a young Black man. This is a strong Black man. And I mean, physically strong, trained to be physically strong. To see him cry when he heard the 911 call that he made to police reporting a murder by police, what he believed to be a murder by police, really struck a chord with me, because we don't get to see Black men being vulnerable that often. And to see then again, this elder, as Tremaine put it, cry on the stand, weeping on the stand, you feel the pain that Black men carry with them all the time, but rarely get to show. And that is traumatizing and it's heartbreaking.
I think when we think about Black male pain in particular, we so often see it manifested in our brothers and our neighbors and those in proximity, right? Not being able to handle the interactions and all the stuff that happens, and we're wound up and coiled up and we lash out. But rarely do we see that kind of, as you call it, this vulnerability. And the hurt is so deep. And it's so common, and you have to do your best to shoulder up every single day when there's a target on your back from every single direction, not just the actual violence of police brutality, not just because of the actual violence of community, but all the abstract forms of violence and the pressure and not having the tools to respond to a system that was always engineered and geared against you. And to see that in this way, and to see that, brother, I'm trying to be so composed. When they're pushing him, you were getting angry, weren't you? First of all, I'm saying, yeah, we're angry. But he said, I didn't get out of my body.
You were angry.
No, you can't paint me out as angry. I was in a position where I had to be controlled, of controlled professionalism. I wasn't angry because I stayed
No,
up.
Jack is non-responsive.
What the defense is trying to do in front of that jury is to say, what's reasonable here? You have a group of a mob of angry black people. Angry black people, not just angry people. Angry. So what's reasonable here? What would you do if you were confronted by, you were angry, weren't you? Always knowing that there are forces against us that never wanted us not just to thrive, they never wanted us to survive.
As I watched the testimony over the last 2 days, what we saw was stages of life in which Black men are traumatized from childhood all the way through late adulthood. We saw Mr. Mcmillan stand there and give this talk to George Floyd as George Floyd was in the process of being killed. Usually this is a talk that you get when you're in the household. Usually this is a thing that you say, and 61 years old, he's an OG, right? He's like, this is the guy that you go to. I'm certain that he's given that same talk to his nephews, to his kids, if he has any, to some of the younger guys in the neighborhood, etc. He even said, as he goes about the neighborhood, if he encounters police officers, that he tells those police officers, hey man, just remember, we want to go home just like you do. We want you to be able to go home safe, and we want to go home safe. So this is a guy that has the wisdom of ages, right? And he comes on this scene where he sees a brother being stopped by police. He makes it his business to go to this man and say, hey, just comply. Just do what they tell you to do. Just get in the car.
I don't want to win. I'm claustrophobic. You ain't going to win. I'm claustrophobic. I got anxiety. I don't want to do nothing to them. Man, I'm scared as fuck, man. You made a mistake somewhere. When I start breathing, it's going to go off on me, man. Okay. Let me count to three and I'm going in.
Pause it right there, please.
And the heartbreaking part about it is you see this life's wisdom come falling down all around him while he's on the stand, because this is what Black men like us have been told since almost the day we were born, that if you just comply, somehow you should be able to figure out a way to make it out of these altercations.
Well, and as you guys both noted, I just think it's so important to stop for a moment. And here you have Mcmillan enter, 61-year-old Black man, enters a scenario where he sees something going sideways. And he knows better than to try to reason with the police officers. He knows the only recourse is to talk to the Black man. He doesn't have any. The reality is George Floyd wasn't the issue here. We've seen the video, right? But all Mcmillan could do was beg the dying Black man, if you can comply just a little bit more, maybe we can stop this. Maybe we can fix this. Maybe we can. He knew better. He knew better than to appeal, as we saw other witnesses do, to the police officers.
And that's the point that I'm making about Mcmillan and his age, and why him being 61 was so potent, because you'll notice a generational difference and a racial difference and even a gender difference in how everyone else on the scene responded.
Well, you raised such an interesting point about it being generational, because of all the witnesses we've heard from, this is the only one who was older than George Floyd. And so he was speaking to him as nephew, just comply.
Yeah. He understands the inheritance, right? And we passed it down from generation to generation. We started this conversation with this idea and notion of trauma. which has been innate, right? And it's passed down from generation to generation. And they come with the rules, and they come with the hope beyond hope, and they come with all of the regulations of moving through these spaces as a Black man, especially, but as a Black person more generally. And he knew better than most because he's seen this thing passed down and passed down and passed down. And sadly, it's a tragic lesson that those minors had to witness. What happens, right, every single day in this country.
And I think that's what's so remarkable. It's become almost cliche throughout this trial because it's been said so many times, right? But I do think people should sit with this idea of what it means when you call the police on the police, right? Like at what point of hopelessness you've arrived.
The end.
Where the people who are supposed to be here to protect and serve are killing someone in front of you, and you pick up the phone and dial 911 and say, hey, there's some cops here killing someone. I need different cops to come.
And to be clear, no other officers responded.
And I was actually getting shades of Officer Goodman, who we saw at the Capitol, who took a stand to protect democracy and protect the system. When you were calling the police on the police, that still reflects a belief in the system. And that is what we are seeing from Black people over and over and over again through our civic engagement. We just want the system to live up to its ideals. And I don't think it's a coincidence that almost everybody we've seen on the stand so far is Black. And they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They were playing by the rules. They were trusting in the system, but it was the system that failed. I
don't think that they were calling the police on the police because they had faith in the system that the system would do right. I think it was quite the opposite. I think I think if I had to guess, most people, and especially the men present, had a different instinct and a different thought about how they wanted to respond, but they knew how it would end.
They had no choice.
They had no choice.
I think of the Dave Chappelle line almost, where, if you find an old Black person, they're basically a certified paralegal, right? Every person on that scene knew exactly where the line was. They knew exactly what they can do and what they couldn't do. And that rendered them relatively hopeless. They appealed to the officer. They appealed to techniques. No, he's losing it. You're on his neck. He can't breathe. Can you check his pulse? They're appealing to medical. They're calling the police because they know a police officer is the only one who's going to be able to stop them. And yet, and again, like I said, I think that does reflect a helplessness, a desperation, but also the burden of an expertise that every one of those Black people on the scene knew exactly the line they could push to not imperil their own lives. And it wasn't enough to save George Floyd's. And I think that's one of the reasons we see so many of them breaking down on the stand, being so upset and emotional. And so, Tremaine, thanks so much for being here and helping us break this down and bringing your expertise here with us as well. And always great talking with you. And hopefully we never have to talk about this stuff again. But unfortunately, I think we know that we will be.
We will. Thank you. Thank y'all so much for having me. I really do appreciate you guys have definitely, raised the bar, and I appreciate y'all for including me.
So as we continue our conversation, I want to welcome in attorney and legal analyst Monique Presley. Monique, you've been watching this trial. You've been paying attention to it just as closely as all of us. What are the main points that you've seen the prosecution make over the last couple of days, and how effective do you think they've been at presenting their case?
First of all, thank you all for having me. I have just the greatest amount of respect for each of you individually and what you're doing. So my emotions have been wackadoo, whack-a-mole right now. And I found myself praying because like times when I was in trial myself, like when I was looking at Mr. Mcmillan today, help him Holy Ghost was what I tweeted. And that was all I could think of to tweet, because when you have a witness that disassembles on the stand like that, because the pain of it, no matter how much you've prepared, is so overwhelming and so defeating, because that's what it was. It wasn't just that he was sad. It was, I couldn't get it done. But while I say that, it was highly effective for a prosecutor. Do I sound callous? I hate to be that way. But the prosecution is rolling out an effective, organized, strategic, and almost flawless case at this point.
And hearing you say that they're delivering an almost flawless case is very affirming, because as a lay person watching it, this seems like a slam dunk. However, at the same time, you're always aware that it only takes one person on a jury who will not convict a police officer. What we saw recently was a juror had to take a break because their stomach was hurting them. And the judge later said, well, that was a stress-induced response. That to me feels profound. Am I reading too far into that? What should we read into that?
We should read as much into it as goes with one juror, because the juror next to that juror might not be feeling anything at all. And today, while we were all doubled over, I mean, at one point, I literally thought, I'm going to puke. And what I love about this trial, if there's something to love, is that the white woman who was the firefighter saw the same thing as the black man who was the expert martial artist, saw the same thing as the 9-year-old girl who saw the same thing as the 17-year-old who really saved all of us by having the wherewithal to film it. And the dispatcher who was seeing it on camera saw the same thing. And that's why I said the prosecution is ingenious, because all of these people testified. And then late in the day today, they show us this body cam video that they had all the time, and look at everybody playing their parts.
We do have to remember the trials have two sides to them.
Yes.
We're deep in the heart of the prosecution's case.
Yes.
Now, I think it's clear, objectively, the prosecution is performing a very strong case. They have very strong witnesses. They have very strong objective facts.
Yeah.
That has always been true here. However, there's going to be a defense. There's going to be a well-compensated defense that is going to make arguments here. And one of my questions is, what I wonder is, and you were just getting to this, Monique, is about what we can expect from them.
At whatever point the defense starts their case, George Floyd will turn into the defendant, right? All the way from glory, he's going to be in a defense chair. And they're going to start a brand new trial. And that brand new trial is going to be about fentanyl. That brand new trial is going to be about counterfeit money. That brand new trial is going to be about resisting arrest. That brand new trial is going to be about prior bad acts and misconduct. We're going to hear all these things about the man who was murdered. That's the way their case is going to go. Whether it is effective or not is going to depend, in my opinion, on the prosecution's ability to do what I call bait and switch, because the law is going to win the day with this jury. They are emotional, but they're going to be instructed to abandon their emotions and to decide on facts and reason and assessment of witnesses and law.
Monique, I have two follow-up questions to that end. One, is the prosecution trying to get ahead of putting George Floyd on trial and making him the aggressor and the perpetrator and the unhinged drug addict by showing the surveillance video? And number two, do you think they'll put Chauvin on the stand, which is very unusual and very uncommon, but it feels like in the face of everything we've seen, it might be worth a gamble for the defense?
So on the first one, yes, the tactic that the prosecution used, and I think they used effectively, is what we in the legal circles call pulling the sting. Back when I was trying cases before I transitioned into crisis manager land, we would do that often. So if you know that there's bad evidence, you want to tell your own story. And in our community, we say, you can't tell it, let me tell it, right? So before the defense has an opportunity, we're going to go ahead and say, yep, it looked like he was under the influence of drugs because he was. Yep, it looked like he was having a little trouble with his sentences because he was.
You think Chauvin will take the stand?
He better not.
What do you
doesn't
don't
have a
think
chance
that can
if he
help him?
does. See, I would, at this point, I think they've probably been spending the last 4, 5, 6 months trying to figure out if this man is capable of emoting, capable of remorse, capable of apology, capable of breaking down on the stand, capable of showing some repentance, whether false or not. He isn't. I am very clear looking at that man who was resting easily while bystanders in community were saying he's bleeding out of his nose, show me a pulse. And then he's shimmying and leaning and pausing and not talking because he knew body cams were on. So everybody else, even in his little cluster of police officers, they're saying things. Is he saying anything? No.
Monique, I had one quick follow-up question on Keith's question, which is, in this case, is it true that Chauvin is going to be held to a reasonable officer standard? Is that the wording of the law? To my understanding, right, police officers under Supreme Court precedent are held to the reasonable officer standard. Would an objectively reasonable officer have taken these same steps? Would they have done these same things potentially?
But here's why they're going to lose on that if the prosecution does its job. We've got this video. We've got 3 other officers, one standing up, 2 further down in the body, touching him, letting him go, shaking his leg, patting him, letting him go.
I'm listening, and I understand that people do stuff. Okay. Grab a seat.
Do they have full weight on him? Do they find it necessary? Do they find it reasonable to continue suppressing him for the full 9 minutes and 29 seconds? No, they don't.
When colleagues of mine at the Washington Post did a look at how rarely officers were charged and then how much more rarely they're convicted, one of the triggers that results in a conviction is when other officers at the scene say that guy didn't need to do that.
The squeeze that I was thinking about today as all this bad testimony rolled out for them was, which of those other cats is like, let me go ahead and do this plea and sing like a canary, because that's the other action that's happening while we're in this trial. There's plea negotiations going on between prosecution and Chauvin. There's plea negotiations with the other defendants. And if I was one of those other 2 defendants' lawyer, I'd be talking to my client and saying, listen here. Here's your one opportunity. You may not have a get out of jail free card, but you have a don't stay in jail as long card if you play it right now and agree to cooperate.
Monique, this has been so valuable. We really appreciate it. This has been such a great conversation. Your expertise is just so crucial. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, thank you for having me. And I would urge your listeners to keep posting on social media and doing what they do, because the court of public opinion, figment or real, is a thing. And we have voices. We have power.
Thank you, Monique.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us. Please check us out on social media at @RunTellThis_, and wherever you listen to podcasts, we are at RunTellThis, a weekly podcast on news and social justice issues. I'm Mara Schiavocampo, joined by Wesley Lowery and Keith Reed. Keep an eye on BET's social platforms for more coverage of the Chauvin trial.